Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner Casey Weade. Casey is the president of Howard Bailey Financial.
Whatever risk you face during your retirement years, we've got a plan.
A published author and radio host.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
His advocacy for retirees and pre-retirees has made him a sought-after speaker and trusted financial leader.
And putting a real plan together.
This is the Purpose-Based Retirement.
Hey, welcome back to the program. I am Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson, certified financial planners with Howard Bailey Financial. This week we kick things off with something that parents and grandparents can really identify with. How taking your kids to a restaurant or really just out anywhere teaches you some basic lessons about preparing for retirement. Our viewer question segment explores the tax impact of gifting to your relatives. And once you're retired, life gets less complicated, right? Well, not necessarily, unless you do some good tax planning, and that's coming up a bit later on in the program. But we're going to begin today with some personal lessons that Casey and his wife have experienced. Now you've got a 2.5-year-old and an 8-month-old, and I know from experience that going out with two little kids, man, you got to plan.
Oh yeah, and Marshall's been through this too. He's went through a lot of these things and endured them a little bit longer than I have. So he's kind of gotten past this stage where they're actually just able to throw him in the car for the most part.
Just get up and
go.
go.
You just go out to eat.
You forget.
Right?
I forget too after listening to some of your stories here. I forget how hard it really was.
Yeah, and there's a lot of planning that goes into preparing just to go out to eat. Or we ran to Target the other day, and you forget the toys. You just there's so many things that go into preparing for all these different things. I started thinking, well, there's a lot of these actions, much like lessons from our mothers. There's a lot of these things that I think we can apply to retirement planning and financial planning, and I really wanted to find some parallels.
All right, so here we go. We're going to walk through the list, and I think you're going to find this entertaining. So be prepared for ups and downs.
Well, you have to be prepared for ups and downs, right? I mean, really being prepared for ups and downs, because it's great to go out to eat with the kids. We get to sit around the table and there's a lot of laughter, but then you're going to have that inevitable screaming that's going to make you leave the restaurant. Or you're going to have that proverbial spilt milk that's going to occur, right? And you have to be prepared for those things. You have to carry some wipes just in case you have to clean up something. You have to be prepared for all these different things. And that is really what we're doing, right? Before we go out, we're making sure that we're really prepared for all of those potential ups and downs. And that's what happens in retirement, right? You are going to have some inevitable ups and downs, but you prepare yourself for those things and you go through all those different worst case scenarios and say, well, what could happen? And then we start and I think many times before you get to retirement, you're going, well, I think I'll be okay. I'm just going to take the risk and everything should work out. I mean, the last few years in the market have been pretty good. Well, why would you not just sit down and really isolate all those different risks you're going to play out all of those different scenarios and stress test things?
Yeah, I see it from clients all the time. Just this week I had a client where they had a $50,000 unexpected expense because one of their children needed significant amount of help, and it was kind of an emergency. So you're going to have these things. Maybe it's not even for you. Maybe it is for the kids. And so you prepare for those, because sometimes you get a little dirt on your hands.
Exactly. Right? If that's what it is. Now, I actually have another person that I recently put together a backup plan for, and this was kind of a do-it-yourselfer, right? And he actually originally came in to visit with us with his wife several years ago, and he came back and he said, I've done really good in the market the last few years, and I've been moving some money to cash, and I just want to make sure if I want to retire, doing some consulting right now, if I want to quit tomorrow, the market's down, I've still got a place to go for my income. We set aside, he needed $30,000 in income every year in order to make sure he could retire. We only set aside $250,000 of his portfolio in a totally liquid place. It was cash liquid, so we could get to it at any time, and now he had no risk with those dollars. And he said, well, what if the market goes up next year? Well, if the market goes up 20%, we get 10%. It goes up 5%, we get 5% minus fees and expenses of 1%, maybe 2% a year. Now we've got a place that's safe and protected, that's making a decent rate of return, and it's liquid. So at any time, this enabled him to continue to take risk with his other market-based investments. Well, if he ever needs $30,000 a year, he secured that income for the next 10 years with a place that's going to make a heck of a lot more than it would if it just sat in cash, and it's safer than the market because we know we can't lose the original investment. It's insured and protected.
So he's got $30,000 in wet wipes for spills.
Hey, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, preparation. When you're going out with the kids, preparation is a key to a successful event.
Yeah, and start early, right? I mean, we know
typically at least a week in advance, if not more, that we're going to be leaving at a set time. And we know what's going to be entailed on that day. We had some friends, we went over to their place for dinner, and we wanted to bring the kids with us, and they have children. Then we've got a 2.5-year-old, they were going to play together, and we've got another one that's 8 months old, and he takes a lot of preparation. He's got a feeding tube, he's got all these medications that he has to have, and it takes us a long time for us to pack up all those things. And we're planning literally at least a week in advance, because we know what we're going to need, what time he's going to have his feeding, what time he's going to have to get his medication, what time we're going to have to get home. It takes a lot of planning and preparation, much like you should be doing the same thing with your retirement. But unfortunately, most people spend more time planning their next big vacation than they do planning for retirement. You can't just turn 65 and say, oh, I'm here, I'm going to retire today. It takes more time and planning than that if we have a worst case scenario. Right now, market's been great. Maybe you just did that and said, I'm just going to retire today. However, you better start doing your planning today, because people that retired and planned to retire in 2008 or 2001 or 1929, those individuals that planned on retiring right before a major market crash that didn't have a plan, that didn't do their preparation like we do with our kids, they ended up in a lot of trouble. Then it ended up putting a lot of them back to work.
Some parents have a heavier burden when they're heading out of the house. And that's
I always thought Marshall had a heavier burden.
He always thought my kid was a little crazy, a little rambunctious, a little wild. But now he's starting to see that maybe
my
I'm
2-year-old's
not
just as crazy.
Yeah,
I thought
go.
his kids
Good.
were crazy, and mine are too. And but for retire, I know I worked with a couple a number of years ago that came in, had a significant amount of credit card debt, and they weren't sure they were ever going to be able to retire because of the number of payments they were making were over $1,000 a month between their credit cards. Then they had a small mortgage. We were able to put together a budget and an expense plan and reduce the interest rates on those credit cards and their mortgage and reallocate things all together, just so that they would be able to retire in a year to 2 years, depending on how aggressively they wanted to attack those things, and do really what Dave Ramsey says, your debt snowball. We helped them accomplish that, and because we were able to cut those expenses, they were ultimately able to retire. And boy, they had a lot heavier burden. They were not people making 6 figures a year. They did not have a ton of money saved for retirement, but what they did was plan, and ultimately they retired just like you can.
Oh, great. Proper gear is always required.
Well, I think ultimately what this means is working with an independent advisor, working with someone that has all the tools at their disposal. And when we go out with our kids, we have to have all the tools at our disposal. For instance, we have to have that changing barrier. And one time I forgot that changing barrier at home, which is the thing that you change your kid on, right? You don't just take them into the Walmart bathroom and lay them on the plastic cot that's in there. You want to put something down. You want to put down a barrier. I forgot that one time, and so I kind of had to hold them with one hand and change the diaper with the other hand. I've gotten pretty skilled at that.
Wow.
You don't want to have to do that. And if you have the right tools, you don't have to. If you wanted to put a nail in the wall, you'd use a hammer. You wouldn't use the bottom of your shoe and scuff up the wall. But if you don't work with a truly independent advisor, you're not going to get that unbiased opinion. You're not going to get all the tools. Either you're going to have too much risk, not enough risk, or you're going to be in a position where you haven't covered any of the major risks that you're going to face in retirement.
Don't forget the safety check.
Don't forget the safety check.
Check the car seat, right?
And I learned this from Marshall, actually. Marshall showed me exactly how to put that seat in and what I needed to do. You got to check that seat. It shouldn't move more than an inch, okay? So if you don't get anything else out of the show, now you know how to position that car seat. We check it every single time. You need to be periodically stress testing your retirement strategy as well, and get a second opinion from not the person you got a first opinion from. So stress test that portfolio with someone else so that they can show you what that worst case scenario is and make sure you don't have any leaks in your boat.
Well, we want to know how far that your portfolio can shift, just like that car seat. We don't want it moving, 30, 40%. You want to keep it tight.
And many individuals will say they're conservative investors. However, when we stress that portfolio, that conservative portfolio that they thought they had does not line up with what they thought was conservative. Conservative portfolios, I've seen individuals that could lose more than 20% of their life savings. $500,000, that's $100,000. $5 million, we're talking about a big chunk of change.
All right, so there you go. There are some ways that going out with the kids can be like planning for retirement. There are similarities all through the phases of life. Today we have a special offer for the next 10 people who are going to call us right now. It's a complimentary financial review of your entire financial retirement plan. It's an opportunity to get an education about your money because we want you to make the best decision you can moving forward. So for the next 10 callers, Casey and members of the team will make time on the calendar to visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. We're answering viewer questions in just a moment.
Hi, I'm a certified financial planner professional. I believe the bar for entry into the financial industry is far too low. You and your hard-earned money deserve better. With a CFP professional, you can have the confidence you are working with an advisor who has met not only rigorous education and experience requirements, but also is held to the highest ethical and professional standards in the industry, resulting in better methods that will address the financial challenges you will face in retirement. If you'd like to see how a CFP professional can serve you, give us a call.
Ready to maximize your retirement strategy? Register to attend the Purpose-Based Retirement Live with Casey Weade. Call our office at 866-482-9559 or visit www.howardbailey.com to register now.
Casey gets emails from viewers through the week. We pull some of those out and invite those people to join us on the phone. That's what we've done with Paula from Shipshawana. Paula, go ahead with your question.
Why am I told I can't spend my principal during retirement? I saved it. What's so wrong with spending it?
Well, nothing wrong with spending it.
There's
right?
nothing wrong with spending it. That's why you saved it, right? You know, I think that's one of those common misconceptions, Casey, where people think, well, I can only live off the interest. I need to preserve my principal. I can't dip into the principal.
Right. You know, I recently had
Why?
the same thing happen with my dad. I had this conversation with him because he said, well, he wants to continue to work. I said, well, you've saved enough for retirement. Why don't you just enjoy it at this point? You can spend your principal. You can afford to do that. You don't have to leave behind, money for me. I'm going to take care of myself. And then I said, you tell your clients this all the time, right? So why don't you go ahead and spend some of that money? And I think it just becomes this mental block as we step into retirement that we've just been saving X amount of dollars every single year. And we finally get to retirement and we go, boy, I don't want to ever see this go down in value. I've worked too hard for it. Well, what you've really worked, maybe you worked so hard so that you could pass it on to your kids.
Right.
If that's the case, then preserve the principal. But most of the people we work with, they worked so hard so that they could actually spend it. I had a gentleman that we worked with a number of years ago that came in and he worked for NIPSCO. He came in, he was 52 years old, had $700,000 saved for retirement, and he said, Casey, I've worked overtime my entire life so that I could retire at 59 and a half and enjoy a really long retirement. He said, I want to spend my last dollar and write a bad check right before they put a nail in the coffin. And there's really nothing wrong with that. Maybe leaving debt behind for the next generation is a bad thing, but I mean, for most of the people we work with, that's the way they want to do it. However, doing that takes skill, right? I mean, that's a dangerous thing to do if we're just going to throw it in the stock market, throw it in stocks and bonds, and then we've got to say, well, I'm only going to spend 4% a year or 5% a year. I want to preserve my principal and only live off of the income because I remember in 2008, it lost half of its value. I remember it lost 20% of its value, and what if it takes years to get back? We don't spend our principal when we're uncertain about what the future might hold. And that comes out of a lot of planning that was done back in the 90s. William Bennigan came up with a 4% withdrawal rule. And when he created that 4% withdrawal rule, basically took a balanced portfolio of 60% stocks, 40% fixed income or bonds. And that 60-40 balanced portfolio, if we took 4% out a year of X amount of dollars, we'd have a 95% chance success. So only, say, 1 out of 10 or maybe 5% of the time or 10% of the time we'd end up broke. We wouldn't have anything left over when we got to the end of our retirement years. However, we don't have to do that, right? We can have different strategies that we can really spend our retirement. And if we're just hoping on that 1 out of 10 chance occurs, then maybe we shouldn't spend our principal because everything's at risk in the market. But if you have a real strategy and a real plan, a guaranteed income strategy, for instance, that gives you the ability to spend with confidence, spend your principal, and know even if it goes to zero, even in the worst case scenario, you'll never run out of income during your retirement. It's going to keep on paying for the rest of your life. That can give you the confidence to really spend some of that principal that you've saved and worked for that you should get to spend.
Yeah.
So, Paul, if you have a plan, you can eat the seed corn. I think that's the bottom line. Let's jump up to Niles, Michigan. Tate, what's your question?
I just inherited a couple of $100,000 from my mother. I would like to give a good chunk of it to the kids this year. But my financial advisor told me I could only give away $14,000 per kid. I only have 3 kids, so that doesn't allow for much. What type of taxes would they owe if I gave more?
Well, the short answer there is that you can actually give all of that money away to the kids.
Sure.
I mean, oftentimes we're hung up on that $14,000 figure because that's how much we can give without having to file a gift tax return. But the reality is, you know, if those kids are married, you could give $14,000 to each spouse, so now you can give $28,000. Now, if you're married as well, then you can each give $28,000. But the reality is, Casey, we have a very large amount of money that each individual in the United States can gift away without any taxes being owed.
Virtually almost everybody in the United States, I mean, other than the 1%ers in the United States, could give away their entire life savings or estate at any given time, and nobody's going to owe any taxes on it. I think this is an issue my dad was always constantly frustrated with, being a financial advisor for over 40 years. You know, he ran into this all the time, where I don't want to give away more than $14,000 because I want the kids to pay taxes. They're not going to pay taxes. You have something called a unified gift tax credit that in 2017 is $5.49 million per person. That's $11 million per couple. So you could give away all $11 million and no tax consequences occur. However, most people don't have $11 million they're trying to give away. You might have $500,000 that you want to give away. If you give away $500,000, somebody has to file a gift tax return, but no taxes are owed. It's just going to reduce that tax credit that covers you for estate taxes at the end of your life. So that's really what's going on there. So don't worry about giving away money. If you want to give away more, go ahead and do it. It just might mean you have to file a tax return when you do it.
Which is not a big deal.
That's not a big deal.
Okay. Cheryl, let's see what's on your mind over in Van Wert, Ohio.
I'm interested in buying a duplex as an investment property, and I'm trying to figure out where I should get the money from. I could use after-tax money, but I also have a significant amount of IRA money sitting in cash. What should I use?
Well, I'm going to go back to the purpose of the IRA. So why do you have the IRA in the first place? You know, the IRA was created and given to us so that we could save for retirement to replace retirement income. It wasn't meant to be something for us to hit home runs and flip properties with and use it as an emergency fund. And you know, it was really meant to create consistent and reliable retirement income once we ultimately got to retirement. Now, there are still a number of companies out there that really push you putting your real estate into IRAs. There's just some things that you really need to watch out with. There's some ownership issues, and I think above all else, there's some tax issues. One, if you use that IRA to buy that piece of real estate, when you have expenses with that real estate, you better make sure you didn't use and drain the whole IRA, because expenses have to be paid out of that IRA. And if you have expenses, well, let's go back to the reason you bought the property before we even go there. Most people are buying into investment properties so that they can start their own LLC, start their own business, and generate some tax deductions and some tax benefits, ultimately, so that they can reduce the number that shows up as taxable income on your 1040. You want to generate some business expenses. If it's owned by an IRA, those expenses are no longer deductible. So there's some things that you need to think about before you just jump in and use your IRA as real estate to purchase real estate. I think it's really about using that IRA ultimately to create consistent and reliable income. Use your after-tax dollars to buy the real estate, get better tax benefits, and now you have the ability to have that reliable income too.
All right, thank you very much, Cheryl. Good question. And if you have a question for Casey, info@howardbailey.com. We'll get it there, and we might ask you to join us on the program in the future. Right now, a special offer for the next 10 people who pick up the phone and give us a call. We're offering a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's an opportunity to get an education about your money so that you can make the best decision for yourself moving forward. So for our next 10 callers, Casey and the team will make time on the calendar to sit down, visit with you, and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. Our question of the day has to do with retirees and taxes. Approximately what percentage of retirees today are paying tax on their Social Security benefits? Is it few, some, or all of us? Well, the answer coming up.
You may have a purpose for your retirement, but have you repurposed your assets to help you achieve your dreams?
At Howard Bailey Financial, we believe in the purpose-based retirement. We help you determine a clear plan of action to get you to your goal. We can help you review all of the variables, find and understand your options, and help you come up with a strategy that gets you closer to your purpose. Let Howard Bailey help you achieve the retirement you deserve.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
Heading into the break, we asked a question about the number of retirees today who are paying taxes on their Social Security benefits. So we gave you some choices. Casey, which one of these was correct?
Lee, the number of individuals that are paying taxes on their Social Security benefits is actually 35% of those receiving benefits are actually paying taxes on those. However, 70% of individuals that report receiving Social Security on their tax return are paying taxes on their Social Security benefits. So what that tells us is the majority of affluent retirees are going to be paying taxes on their Social Security benefits at some point in the future. This is what's known as the Social Security tax torpedo. Because of one additional dollar of earnings, you could end up paying taxes on those Social Security benefits that were previously tax-free, now being taxable to the tune of up to 85% of your benefits as a whole being taxable during your retirement years. However, there are typically some things you can do before you step into retirement to make sure you don't have those same amount of Social Security taxes due ultimately to you. And that's one of the most important things we can do when it comes to financial planning. It's not just about the investments. It's not just about buying the next best stock. It's about incorporating our tax planning with our investment planning so that we can put more dollars back in your pocket. So what we're going to talk about here is we're going to talk about different type of places that you may have increased expenses due to taxes. We're going to focus on Social Security due to 401k distributions and potentially even increased Medicare premiums as well. One of the reasons that many individuals end up paying taxes on their Social Security benefits at a very high rate is due to something called the required minimum distribution, also known as an RMD. That required minimum distribution occurs after the age of 70 and a half. So after you reach the age of 70 and a half, you're going to be forced to begin to take distributions from your tax-deferred dollars, your IRAs, or your 401ks. Now, when you're forced to begin to take those distributions, that can mean you pay more taxes on your Social Security benefits. So let's first understand how RMDs work. How do required minimum distributions work? You take your value of your IRA on December 31st of the previous year and divide it by what the IRS offers us as a life expectancy. So at the age of 70, that'd be 27.4. So let's say on December 31st, you reach your age, your value was $500,000 and you're 70 years old. Your required distribution would be a little over $18,000. This is what that table looks like. So at age 70, the distribution period, or the divisor, is 27.4. When we get to age 80, it's 18.7. That number continues to fall. We get to age 100, and that divisor is now 6.3. As we begin to reduce the divisor, every single year we're forced to take a larger and larger distribution from our IRA, meaning more and more of your Social Security benefits may become taxable. You may pay more federal taxes and state and local taxes along the way. If we understand how this is ultimately calculated, we have to understand provisional income. Provisional income, also known as your combined income, is the number that tells us how much of your Social Security benefits are ultimately going to end up being taxable. So it's somewhat of a complex formula I'm going to walk you through. Just as you see on that uniform distribution table, to use a divisor to take your value of IRA of December 31st previous year and divide it by a number that changes every single year, it probably would have been easier if the IRS just told us this is a percentage you're going to have to take out each year. It would also be easier, rather than using provisional income, if they just use your taxable income, for instance. But if there's an easy way to do things, Lee, and a hard way for the IRS to do things, which way do they typically choose?
Yeah, always the more complicated.
The hard way, right?
Yeah.
And this is why this is such a big industry. So let's talk a little bit about provisional income and how it's ultimately calculated. First, you take half of your Social Security benefits. Then you add that to your ordinary income. So if you have any W-2 earnings, maybe you have interest earnings, you have to add in your ordinary income. Even IRA distributions count as ordinary income. And then you add back in your dividends and capital gains. I know there's preferential treatment as long as we have qualified dividends, long-term capital gains. There's preferential treatment for federal taxes, but those things still are added back into your provisional income to ultimately come up with how much your Social Security is taxable. You also have to add back in your non-taxable interest. So you might have thought you were really smart. We're just going to put everything in municipal bonds so we have a tax-free retirement. However, municipal bonds still count towards calculating your provisional income. So let's talk about the different tax thresholds. If you're single, then you have two different thresholds, $25,000 and $34,000. After your provisional income income goes over each one of these thresholds, more and more of your benefits become taxable. Over $25,000, up to 50% of your benefits are taxable. Over $34,000, up to 85% of your benefits become taxable. Make it a couple. So if you're married filing jointly, those levels go from $25,000 to $32,000, $34,000 to $44,000. So let's walk through a little example. Let's say that you had a total income of $60,000 a year. You had $40,000 in Social Security income. You had a $20,000 distribution from your IRA. What's your provisional income? It's $40,000 divided by 2, which is 20, plus 20, that's $40,000. So your provisional income is $40,000 a year. Ultimately, you're going to end up paying taxes on $4,000 of your $40,000 in Social Security benefits due to that distribution. That is 10% of your benefits ultimately become taxable. On the other hand, what if we still had $60,000 in income, but instead now our Social Security benefits $20,000 instead of $40,000 and our IRA distributions $40,000 instead of $20,000? We still have $60,000 in income, but now our provisional income went up by only $10,000 to $50,000. Ultimately now $11,000 of our benefits are taxable. Instead of 10% of that benefit being taxable, 55% is taxable. So looking at these two things side by side, what's going on here? We have $40,000 in IRAs, $20,000 in Social Security income. Our taxable benefit is $11,000 versus $4,000. Our other taxable income is $40,000 versus $20,000. Our IRA distribution. Total taxable income is $50,000 versus $24,000, and we had $60,000 in total income in both scenarios. Now our standard deductions, personal exemptions are the same. Now our net taxable income is almost $30,000 versus $700. It's costing us over $250 a month every single month in taxes due to that distribution. That's money that should be going back in your pocket with proper planning. You also may pay higher Part B premiums or Part D premiums, your drug plan, when you start to see those RMDs. So have you analyzed what your taxes are going to be in retirement? With a purpose-based retirement, we're going to analyze every one of your income streams today, what they're going to be in retirement, and what we might be able to do today to reduce those taxes, ultimately putting more money in your pocket so you can spend it on things you really enjoy rather than handing it over to Uncle Sam.
You know, I'm going to propose here that people watching this program are typically smarter than the average guy. But I'm going to challenge you, did you really understand that and think you can take that on yourself? I think that is the reason you have to have a professional on your team.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it takes a team too, rather than just having one professional. So you've got your certified financial planner, your investment advisor. I think it really takes your CFP coupled up with your CPA and your attorney, especially for more affluent individuals, to ensure that you're covering all of those bases from taxes to investments to estate planning, etc.
Well, if you're not getting the kind of input and advice that maybe you think you should have, here's an opportunity. So for the next 10 people who call us right now, we're going to offer a complimentary financial review of your entire financial and retirement plan. It's an opportunity for you to learn more about your money so you can make the best decisions for yourself moving forward, not only on taxes, but on many other elements. So for the next 10 callers, Casey and the team will make time on their calendar to visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. Hope you will call. And if you'd like to learn more, you can always go get a copy of Casey's book online at thepurposebasedretirement.com or drop by howardbailey.com and learn more. The email address is right there if you'd like to send a question. We'd love to feature you on a future program, and we'll see you next time around.